The Nicholas brothers were two of the most popular and talented dancers in American history. Their careers spanned more than 4 decades, and they performed for crowds all over the world. But before they became household names, they had a humble beginnings, which what started out as a way to make ends meet quickly turned into something much bigger than either brothers could have ever imagined. They went from performing at local theaters to appearing on Broadway and finally making it big in Hollywood. They even danced in the Oscar-winning movie Stormy Weather. But this wasn't just a story about two men who became famous for their dancing ability. It was about love and friendship and perseverance through adversity and never giving up on your dreams, no matter what obstacle stands in your way between you and your goals. Hey friends, welcome to my channel, Beautiful Disaster. This is where we break down true crime, vintage Hollywood, and more. If you are an oldie but a goodie, thank you for coming back. And for those who are here for the first time, thank you. This is where I just deep dive into some of the historical events and telling you a story while we be writing in our journals or creating art, or you can just listen to me talk. Either way it goes, this is going to be good. If you haven't already subscribed, please do so you never miss an upload from me. And also don't forget to turn on the notification bell button so that way you can be notified when I upload new content. So now, without further ado, let's talk about the Nicholas brothers. The Nicholas brothers' parents were Viola and Ulysses Nicholas. Both of them were college-educated couple. They were both professional musicians as well. Viola was a pianist while Ulysses was a drummer. During the 1910s to the 1930s, they performed together in various pit orchestras for African-American vaudeville shows. They even formed their own group known as the Nicholas Colligans, which was popular during that time. The college-educated couple would then become parents on October 20th, 1914 in Mobile, Alabama. And Ulysses determined that everything about their son would be special, so they christened him with an exotic European name. They end up naming him Fayard Antonio Nicholas. Months later, the family left the segregated South for the more integrated North, and in Philadelphia, they found success as a pit musicians and the black vaudeville theater called the Standard. Each night, Viola and Ulysses, as they're performing, they will actually end up taking Fayard with them and putting him in his bassinet and everything, while Ulysses play on his drums and Viola would be playing on the piano and everything. Fayard actually said in an interview, "I have wonderful parents. They the best in the world. They taught us from right from wrong, and I just love them." End quote. As Fayard grew up into an extroverted adolescent, Fayard would spend like every day in the audience, and he was really captivated by the tap dancers and the glamorous lives of the performers. And he started to think he really wanted to be part of that. So Fayard, just by watching the other performers, he began to actually teach himself how to perform. He would walk down the street, and when he see a fire hydrant, he would actually jump over it into a split and then come up. That was actually one of the famous stunts that the Nicholas brothers are also known for. In 1921, Fayard and his younger sister Dorothy were joined by a brother named Harold Lloyd Nicholas. And before long, Harold was Fayard's faithful disciple. Fayard said that his little brother's movements to him were like a poet. He said it never can be replaced. He is talking to you with his hands and feet. He was always there for me. Soon, Fayard was choreographing professional routines for the pair. Fayard said in an interview, "My father was watching me one day as I was really something. And he said, 'Son, there's something that you do I like very much.' I said, 'What is that, Dad?' He said, 'I like the way you use your hands. Do more of that.' I said, 'Okay, Dad.' And so that's how we got the Nicholas brothers style." End quote. In 1931, the team made its stage debut at the Standard Theater, where they stunned the crowd with their adult sophistication, and within months, they were star attraction at all the local black vaudeville shows. Even though they were kids, they moved like adults. Usually, you have to work into something being good. It seemed like they were good right from the beginning. Their mother, protective mother Viola, she made sure that her sons were dressed in impeccable suits and spit-shine shoes. The Nicholas brothers said that their mom was real theatrical mom. She understood everything about the business. She sure followed and stood by them. She made sure that their sons always presented a portrait of dignity in Prague and who they were and what they were about. Popular stage acts were natural for the movies. In 1932, Warner Brothers Studio hired the exciting dance duo to make their first screen appearance in the low-budget movie short titled Pie Pie Blackbird. By a greater offer lay just ahead for them. By the early 1930s, Harlem was one of the prosperous black communities in America and is the heart of the corner of 142nd Street and Lenox Avenue stood the glamorous Cotton Club. It was run by powerful gangsters and was protagonized by a white celebrity clientele who sipped champagne as they were entertained by the likes of like Bill Robinson, Ethel Waters, Cade Calloway, but black people were found only on the stage. The Cotton Club was completely segregated. Black people could not go there. Fayard said in an interview, the doorman, he would stop you. The doorman is black. I didn't like that at all. Not at all. End quote. In 1932, 17-year-old Fayard and 11-year-old Harold made their Cotton Club debut before a star-studded audience. Their stunning number stopped the show, and after that triumphant night, no singer or dancer dared to follow them. The Nicholas brother family moved to Manhattan soon after, where Fayard and Harold lived in a world pampered and protected from the harsh realities known to African American shows. Harold and Fayard stated that at 12 midnight, 5 or 6 o'clock in the morning, they would go to the apartment and then they would go to bed and try to get some sleep. But because their teacher was coming there about 3 o'clock in the afternoon, she would leave and then they would go back to bed until it was time to get up again and help. And also, chauffeur would be outside waiting for them. The Nicholas brothers rode in a long limousine that would take them around to the studios and wherever they had to perform. The brothers grew extremely close despite their age difference and their drastically different personality. Fayard was considered more of an outgoing, friendly, optimistic type of person. Harold was, cool, distant, and emotionally detached. Harold was the cute one. Fayard was the one that held the two together. They really worked hard for everything that they had in life. Harold kind of had a casual thing about him, some difference in the style in a way. Both young men were favorites of the Cotton Club. Choir girls, especially the seductive Harold, who from an early age found women to be irresistible, he said. Other stars like Charlie Chaplin, Glory Swanson, and Al Jolson asked to meet the amazing Nicholas brothers. And although black performers were not allowed to mingle with all the white audience, for the Nicholas brothers, the Cotton Club manager, they asked to meet the amazing pair, and although black performers were not allowed to mingle with all white audience for the irresistible Nicholas brothers, the house manager actually ended up making an exception. And for the Nicholas brothers to be able to go out there and meet a famous person who was white, they felt like this stopped the integration at the Cotton Club. Although Great Depression had brought America to its knees, The Nicholas brothers of Harlem were making more money than most adults, and in 1933, 12-year-old Harold actually reported to Paramount Astoria Studios on Long Island to appear briefly in a movie drama called The Emperor Jones, starring Paul Robeson. But the Nicholas brothers had just begun their time to stardom, and their fame would soon spread across the country as one of the movie's most powerful Mongols summoned them to Hollywood. In 1934, the Nicholas brothers made their first trip to California to appear in and produce Samuel Goldwyn's lavish musical Kid Million, starring Eddie Cantor. In glamorous Hollywood, the pair got to meet many of their idols, like the world's most celebrated dancer, Fred Astaire, who was filming at Top Hat at RKO Studios at the time. Fayard stated that he loved meeting Fred Astaire, and he said, "We finished synchronizing steps that we went out and said, okay, let's do the time step," end quote. So they really enjoyed being able to hang out with celebrities like Fred Astaire and everything. The future looked bright for the Nicholas family, which seemed inseparable, but in 1935, tragedy struck when the boy's father, Ulysses, suffered a fatal heart attack. The brothers had felt like they lost not only, but one of their greatest champions was their dad. Their mother, Viola Nicholas, she quickly took charge of her son's careers, and in 1936, the brothers made their Broadway debut, joining Bob Hope in the Ziegfeld Follies. I hope I'm saying that right. The choreographer was a ballet genius named George Balanchine. George Balanchine. George was, I hope I'm saying that right. I'm sorry, y'all, if I'm butchering these words. George was happy to meet the pair, and he told them that he's seen their movies, and he then asked them to show him some of their talent, and the brothers said, okay. So in the interview, he said that in the interview, the brothers said, "This is real." So we got some space and I jumped over my brother's head into a split, and he went through my legs, and it just split, and we were just doing all of these crazy things. And he said, and George said, "Did you ever take ballet?" And they were like, "No." He's like, "No, we never did." And he was like, "Well, it looks like it." So they even impressed George Balanchine. I'm hoping I'm saying that man's last name right. I'm probably not. So Balanchine on Broadway the following year for the Roger and Hart, the musical Babes in Arms. The brothers starred in that. They routine with him in that production, and then the show basically was a smash, running 289 performances. After its long run, the pair actually ended up returning to their unofficial home, where one fateful day, the trio of the singing beauties caught their eye. At the trio center was a shy 16-year-old named Dorothy Dandridge. Fayard said that, "I looked at my brother and said, 'Look over there.' My main eye was on Dorothy. Then I could see she was paying more attention to my brother, so I backed out, because my brother and we would never fight over women." 16-year-old Harold was deeply struck by Dorothy's vulnerability and exquisite beauty. On his best behavior, he courted her on dates, of course chaperoned by her protective family. Harold said in an interview that she was shy, but she was, quiet. She was beautiful, and I'm the outspoken one, end quote. Both of the Borgings. So soon after Dorothy and Harold started dating each other. So while the relationship was on hold in 1939, the Nicholas brothers were booked on a tour to South America. They thrilled audience alongside the bombshell from Brazil, Carmen Miranda. The entertainer was about to make her Hollywood movie debut in a big budget Technicolor musical called Down Argentine Way. produced by 20th Century Fox. Betty Grable was said to be, provide the romance, but the studio head Daryl Zanuck, he adds his best by adding one more musical act to the picture. Fox Nick Castle was excited by the possibility of the versatile brothers could offer, and together they crafted a number that actually broke ground with its combination of elegance and athleticism. Director Cummings wanted to actually shorten the number, but Nick Castle, he wanted to keep it intact. The studio finally agreed to show the scene Castle's way at a sneak preview. Right after this, he said, "Listen after your number." The audience in the theater were clapping their hands, stomping their feet, whispering that the operator in the projection room, he actually had to rewind the film and actually show it again because people loved it so much. The number actually ended up staying intact, and it went to become one of Hollywood's classic. Soon, the Shrew Enix signed the brothers to a 5-year non-exclusive contract, a rarity for black performers in Hollywood back then. The pair actually resettled in Los Angeles, and then they were soon back on the Fox lot filming a specialty dance for the musical Tin Pan Alley. But the Nicholas brothers were not allowed to appear in the film's headlining stars like Alice Faye, Betty Grable, and John Payne, because in all of their Fox movies, the brothers' routines were staged so they could easily be cut when the film was shown in a racially intense area like the Deep South. So at the time, it was all right, but in the movie, if you were separate, but they were never integrated in with the white cast, which was kind of shocking when I was doing the research on this. Theirs was actually done separately. So by 1941, Harold was pressing Dorothy Dandridge to set a wedding date. She was hesitant at first, but in the meantime, they formed a different partnership on film in Some Valley Serenade, starring Sonia Henney and Glenn Miller's orchestra. The brothers were signed to dance to a new song called Chattanooga Choo Choo. At first, they hated the tune. The brothers really did not like Chattanooga Choo Choo. So they actually ended up convincing Fox to hire Dorothy for some extra kick. Between black people and the early films, in 1941, another woman was about to join the Nicholas entourage. So Fayard ended up meeting a beautiful college student with a quick sense of humor, a sharp intellect. Her name was Geraldine Pat. Geraldine says she was fascinated with his lifestyle, his experiences. He seemed so vulnerable. You wanted to immediately protect him. She said, "I think anyone's first impression of fairness, he probably one of the nicest human beings in the world that you'll ever meet." Fayard said that he just wanted to be a bachelor, but when he met Geraldine, he really was fascinated with her, and he told his brother, "I'm gonna marry that girl." And he kept true to his word. He actually ended up marrying Geraldine less than a month later in January of 1942. And 8 months after they got married, Harold followed in his brother's lead when he walked down the aisle with Dorothy Dandridge. The Nicholas brothers were on top of the world. They were married, they had new wives, and soon they would climb even higher while struggling against the barriers of race and facing family heartbreak. By 1942, the Nicholas brothers were among America's most black entertainers thanks to their stunning specialty number for 20th Century Fox. The Nicholas brothers had tremendous impact, specifically for black people. Black voters would go see a movie, and they were going to see the Nicholas brothers and felt that kind of pride. even with their talent would not protect them from the shadows of racism. Their color buried them from even entering the Fox Studios commissary to eat. They would felt humiliated, so they would actually end up driving home for their meals until Daryl Zanuck, he actually ended up learning that the brothers, the meeting situation, insisted they be allowed inside the commissary after he found this out. For Harold, life at home was fulfilled with tension. Harold was very unfaithful to his lovely wife Dorothy. Harold said that, and he quote, "I wanted to be a big man, that showed that I wasn't just a youngster, something in her house. I was just horrible. I loved her, but I was horrible," end quote. On screen, however, the brothers never made a misstep, and in musical Stormy Weather, featuring Lena Horne, Bill Robinson, Fats Waller, and Cabe Calloway. But it was the Nicholas brothers who stole the movie, where the dance number Fred Astaire once called the greatest ever put on film was the Grand White Staircase. They did 3 to 4 splits. They go back and they come up and without using their hands. So when they head up to the right side of the staircase, people said that was beautiful. The brothers did a famous routine where they would jump over one another on the staircase. Their success in Stormy Weather, the brothers dreamed the more important film roles, while Harold also aspired to a solo singing career. But in March of 1943, the team faced separation for the first time. World War II actually began, and Fayard was drafted, becoming Private Nicholas. Stationed in Mississippi, the elegant dancer found himself assigned to a laundry detail in a all-black unit. Back in Los Angeles, Harold turned his energies to his two passions, which was golf and women. Harold was rarely at home and spent little time with his pregnant wife Dorothy. On September 1st, a pain-stricken Dorothy actually tried to convince Harold that their baby was on the way, but he casually dropped her off at home of Jerry Nichols' house and taking their car and leaving them stranded. Harold had what he called a funny. Harold said that he left the keys and he guessed they thought he had the car. And Jerry actually ended up finding, so they're thinking, okay, he has the keys in the car. So I guess he hid the keys or something, or put the keys somewhere, and they thought, okay, he has the car or whatever. But in the interview, Harold said, I just hid the keys, I didn't have the car. But Jerry actually ended up finding a man that was going to work and actually ended up getting Dorothy in. But Dorothy kept holding back. She said, Harold is coming, Harold is coming. After more than 15 hours of labor, Harold was still MIA. And on September 2nd at 2:42 a.m., Harold Suzanne Nicholas was finally born. Dorothy was overjoyed, and her child's presence made Harold's absences easier to take. In April 1942, a relief Fayard was discharged from the army, and following year, he became the father of a son named Tony. But like Harold, the proud father soon became an absentee parent, but he was a good father though. But by the age of 2, Tony had begun to speak, but that's when Harold and Dorothy started to realize that their daughter, who was age 4, she wasn't speaking at all. So they finally took her to a doctor. A doctor confirmed their worst nightmare. Harlan had irreparable brain damage because Dorothy had held back. The baby was denied oxygen when she was holding back giving birth because she really wanted Harold to be there, and because she did that, the baby was denied oxygen. Fayard said in an interview that a contributing factor, such a beautiful little girl, always felt so bad about that. I don't know how my brother feels about it. He never talks about it much. I know inside he was sad about it. I didn't want to show it. He said he didn't want to show it, like a lot of men, even that they hid their pain, but they don't want to share it. So basically that's how Fayard described his brother, and his brother actually agreed, like he didn't want to show his feeling. He was kind of like a man who would just hide his pain and won't show any type of emotion. But in 1948, the brothers made their first film of appearance as a team alongside Gene Kelly in The Pirate. But unlike white dancers such as Kelly or Astaire, their race was still regulated roles to stay on top. Fayard and Harold would have to look beyond America and sidestepped new obstacles in the decades to come. So by 1948, the Nicholas brothers' career had cooled in Hollywood, but audiences still embraced them dazzling duo, especially when they traveled abroad, where people never thinking about prejudice or anything like that. Europe was all open arms. Europe became the brothers' home into the early 1950s. In London, they danced for the royal family. In Egypt, their admirers, including King Farouk. Harold was especially drawn to Europe's racial climate and its women in Europe. In 1950, Fayard became the father of another son named Paul. But even when his wife Geraldine joined him on tour, Fayard was far from faithful. The way that Harold's wife found out about him cheating, it was when the bellboy came to the room and he said, "Mr. Nicholas, the young lady that you brought along on the tour wants to know if she's staying in this hotel or the one across the way." What happened was the guy was speaking in French, so Geraldine had to translate that for him. And so that's how she ended up finding out that he was cheating, because she had to translate what the bellboy said. I know she was mad. I know she was hot. It said that Geraldine could stand up to her rivals, but Dorothy was deeply wounded by Harold's infidelities. Their marriage was falling apart, and in 1951, the couple actually ended up divorcing. 8-year-old Harlan was placed with the caretaker as Harold withdrew and just basically just put himself into work. Their marriage had ended on not so good terms, people say, but in January of 1953, the brothers returned to America to perform at the inauguration of President Eisenhower. But although they performed for the presidents and kings among their fans, they soon faced bitter discrimination again when they joined Frank Sinatra, the headline at the Sands Hotel in Las Vegas. Between shows, Fayard said, "I walked into the lobby. I'm sitting there. All of a sudden, one of the guys of the hotel came on to me. He says, 'You're not supposed to be sitting here. You should be back in your dressing room.'" Fayard said, "I'm just here minding my own business. I'll go back to my dressing room when I feel like it." There was something that came out of favor, and he would say, "You're white, but I'm talented. Don't you dare treat me less than a man." So this man says, "Well, we're going to make Sammy Davis a new star, and you're not going to work anymore." Fayard said, "Fine. There's the world. I can work in the world." Harold stood by his words, launching a solo career in France. When this happened, basically they weren't getting any more jobs. So Fayard, after this whole dispute, Harold stood by his words by launching a solo career in France. During his stay, he married seamstress Elena Patron in a short-lived union. It didn't last very long, but they did have a son named Millie. Meanwhile, Geraldine Nicholas had enough of Fayard's philandering, and they ended up divorcing in 1956, but they remained like close friends. The 60s would be an era of explosion unrest in America across the nation. Black March for civil rights, and the U.S. soldiers were being called to fight in the distant jungles of Vietnam. In 1965, Harold joined his brother and Bob Hope to entertain the American troops in Vietnam, only 50 miles away from enemy fire, he said. Once back in the States, tragedy hit close to home again. On September 8th, 1965, the brothers received the shattering news that Harold's ex-wife, Dorothy Dandridge, had been found dead of an apparent drug overdose. Harold suffered the loss with typical stoicism. Harold stated that he wished that he had a chance to tell Dorothy that he was sorry for all the hell that he put her through, but she died and he just never got a chance to do that. But he said that he wished he did. But 2 years later, there was cause once again to celebrate in the Nicholas family when Fayard married a lovely, sophisticated model named Barbara January. Fayard felt that she was good for him in so many ways, but as the dancers entertained in their 50s, their career began to move to a slower tempo. So in 1970, Fayard gave a dramatic performance as a man falsely accused of murder in the movie The Liberation of I.B. Jones, opposite of Lola Falana. Even though Harold did wonderful in the film, and he still didn't get any calls for like any other roles. The actor career just didn't take off for him. In 1974 film Uptown Saturday Night, Harold played a Harlem gangster opposite of Bill Cosby and Sidney Poitier. But again, what seemed to be a new beginning for him became a frustrating one. It was like a one-shot appearance, he said, and musically, and he just wasn't getting any offers. Musicals had disappeared from the movie screens, and not a young African American saw the Nicholas brothers as old-fashioned stereotype from an earlier unenlightened Hollywood. It appears that after 45 years of stardom and struggle, the brothers were facing their last dance in the limelight. But appearances can be deceiving, because after fading from the spotlight in 1970s, the Nicholas brothers had enjoyed a decade of renewal and rediscovery. In 1980s, it was stacked partly to popular dancers like Gregory Hines, who embraced tap as a Black American art form. Harold starred on stage in the Top Dance Kid, and one range where he replaced Gregory Hines in the musical Sophisticated Ladies. Harold also found happiness with a Swedish jazz promoter named Regina Newman. She became his manager, his life companion, a woman sensitive to his private times and sometimes movie personalities. She said that it was very difficult to get close to Harold, for, he's very, very honest. He's also selfish. Everybody is a good person, good-hearted. He brought a lot of joy into my life, end quote. In 1989, 75-year-old Fayard was thrilled to receive the Tony Award for choreographing the Broadway dance review Black and Blue. It was one of many awards the brothers received over the next. It was one of the awards the brothers received over the next decade. Awards recognizing them as irreplaceable national treasures. And no doubt accolade and was more prestige than the one they received in 1991 when they were saluted in Washington, D.C. at the Kennedy Center Honors. Throughout the 1980s and 90s, the Nicholas brothers traveled the world to receive awards and honors. Among these were the Kennedy Center for the Lifetime Achievement. Together or individually, they appeared in starring of stage shows until 1993. Together, Charlie Atkins. So throughout the 1980s and 1990s, as they're like getting all these awards, in 1994, both brothers were honored with a star on the Hollywood Walk of Fame. But amid the applause came another painful loss. In 1998, while Fayard recuperated from a stroke, his devoted wife Barbara was hospitalized with an inoperable tumor, and 3 weeks later, Fayard lost his beloved companion to cancer. They were married for 28 years. In an interview, Fayard said, "So much in love with her." Fayard said, and I quote, "So much in love with her. She was beautiful inside and out," end quote. By the support of his family, including his sons, Tony and Paul, and Fayard continued to make appearances around the world. In 1998, at the age of 84, he performed on stage with his granddaughters, 13-year-old Nicole and 10-year-old Kathy. 7 decades, the Nicholas brothers have electrified audiences and inspired fellow entertainers throughout the equivalence of their art. They demanded their full rights as human beings while scaling heights suppressed in the history of dance. Fayard Antonio Nicholas died on January 24, 2006 in Los Angeles, California. And his brother, Harold Lloyd Nicholas, he passed away on July 3rd of 2000 in New York. So that is it, you guys. This is the end of the Nicholas brothers. I really enjoyed the research on this, and I hope you guys like this video, and hope you like the way the scrapbook turned out. I really do like it. It really came out pretty good and everything. And if you guys have any suggestions on any stories that you would like for me to talk about, just leave it down below in the comment section. And also let me know, like, what do you guys remember of the Nicholas brothers? Because the Grand Staircase in Stormy Weather is like my favorite part, because I have to like rewind it, keep watching it, because I'm like, what the heck? Like, them splits, they was going over each other on the stage. It was just like, it was crazy. But they have really opened a lot of doors for people. And for them to be like, when somebody threatened them of not working anymore in the industry just because they're sitting in the front and their skin color, whatever. Fayard's response to that, to me, is so moving. It's just like, okay, well, fine. Then there's the world. I'll go work in the world. And he didn't let that stop him. And I'm glad that they were finally honored and be able to get a star on the Hollywood Hall of Fame and everything, and because they deserved it. They really opened a lot of doors for people in entertainment, whether it's tap dancing and everything. Because I remember seeing like a lot of Gene Kelly movies and Fred Astaire, and I rarely would see a black tap dancer. Mine is Bill Robinson, aka Bojangles. Mine is him, because he was in like Shirley Temple's movies. He was mostly in all of Shirley Temple's movies. But the Nicholas brothers really opened a lot of doors for people, and they held a sophistication and dignity, and they didn't let anybody get in the way of that. And to know that their families even stepping in their footsteps to, you know, do the Nicholas style, their granddaughters and everything, I think that's really cute. I saw a little video of it. I'll post a clip in here. But I really did enjoy the research on this. I was going to do a all Black History Month type of thing, but the research became so much. It takes a little longer, especially you got to do a script and everything, so it took a little longer. Just bear with me. I am going to get out another video to you guys hopefully by the end of the week, because last week I just started school. So yeah, I'm getting in the swing of that and trying to manage my time a little bit better, so that way not only do videos for you guys, but also make sure that I do my schoolwork and stuff like that, and make sure I get my assignments in on time. So yeah, let me know in the comments down below if there's any videos, like any topics of, you know, rather it's vintage Hollywood, true crime, or whatever that you would like for me to talk about. Let me know in the comment section. Let me know what performance of the Nicholas brothers that you really liked. And yeah, so that is it, everybody. I hope you have a wonderful day. Don't forget to hit that notification button. And also be sure to subscribe so you don't miss any new content from me. And I will talk to you all in my next video. Bye, you guys. Stay safe.